We're starting this podcast off right where we got the kitties got their wet food. They are at the peak of existence right now. Nothing is as good as it is when they get wet food.
It's true.
So they're jangling against the bowls.
It's when they're happiest.
For those of you on the podcast who aren't aware, Al's cats love wet food, but as most cats do. I guess I'd assume most cats do. When I was at Al's place, the first time she gave them wet food, I was privy to the experience of her just getting the bowls out, and the cats hearing the bowls and just sprinting into the kitchen like, "Oh crap! It's wet food time! Yeah!"
Well, and the weird thing is they can differentiate like the clink of their cat food bowls from the clink of like my food bowls.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand how they can differentiate, but like they can. They don't come running if I get like my bowl out of the cabinet, but if theirs come out, they're like, they are ready.
They're so good. They're good boys.
They are the bestest of boys.
I love those boys.
Me too.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Seasonal Anime Checkup OVA. It's a podcast where we have conversations about video games, anime, and manga, not talking about cats as the full topic this week.
Hey, Maxwell.
I guess we are. Just kidding.
he's done eating.
He's like, I'm done. Loki's cleaning house, probably.
Yep.
So yeah, we are. I don't know if I said this is a podcast where we have conversations about video games, anime, manga. Hello, I'm Jared, joined as always by my bestest friend in the entire world, Doc Owl and Lady
Aw, hello.
and some cats.
And some cats. One of them is a groomed boy.
He's a groomed boy. No knots. Yet.
0 knots.
Well,
and a shaved booty.
Unless he found a way to get some new ones. I don't know. He's pretty. And he's not nude.
He's not nude. No longer nude.
No longer a nude. No longer a never nude.
Never nude.
I don't know. We saw that picture of a cat in underwear. Maybe there's a cat in some cut off jeans at one point.
Maybe.
A never nude cat.
Maybe I should find some like baby cut off jeans and put one of my cats in them.
They would hate that.
They would absolutely hate that.
So hello, welcome. We're talking about a video game today.
A video game.
We're going to be talking about we're still trying to figure out the correct pronunciation on this. I can't even say pronunciation right. But we are talking about Zanki Zero. I think we might go with Zanki.
Zanki Zero, yeah.
Zanki Zero, Last Beginning, as it is known over here. A game from members of the Danganronpa team. Mm-hmm. Which I think is kind of what piqued our interest in it.
Yeah. Yes.
We played a demo of it when the original Japanese demo came out, I think like last summer. Mm-hmm. And
didn't understand a word of it.
Got a kind of glimpse of the gameplay, even though we never really finished that demo because there was a lot more to that demo than we thought. But it is a strange, like, survival game. And that was something that I was, oh gosh, my internet connection is unstable.
Oh no!
I don't know why it popped that up. My internet connection is so unstable, it made Al cough.
Al's just suffering today.
But yeah, it's a survival game based around the idea of like being able to like revive yourself, essentially.
Yeah, so we're gonna try and give like some overview, and then we're gonna just full on spoil the game for you.
Big spoilers.
So we'll do some. So why are you guys giving yourself a bath now? Come on.
They want to smell like fishies.
Oh my god! All right. But yes, you're able to revive yourself, and you have a group of people. Are there 8 of them?
Yes.
8 of them that have to survive on this island, and shenanigans ensue. I say that as if it's like fun shenanigans, but no, it's pretty horrific.
So basically, they wake up on this island. They don't know why they're there. Everything is run down, like a post-apocalyptic look. And they have to figure out exactly like what's happening, why they're there, and also find ways to survive.
And they have these weird X things in their belly buttons.
The X keys. X gonna give it to you keys.
Oh my god. Yeah, so they realize like, okay, we're on this island and we have to like kill goats to survive and collect water and have to build a bathroom. But yeah, they're basically like trying to figure out how to survive this weird situation at first and like also kind of like get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a pretty crazy cast of characters here, as you usually do in these types of games. Maybe not as wild as like a traditional Danganronpa type of game would have, but you still have some wild people in here. Like you have a children's doctor who is obsessed with That's Love.
And he's beefy.
He's jacked.
He's Jack brother.
He's super jacked. There's a lady cop who is kind of like a southern gal.
Mm-hmm. Got a farmer.
We got a farmer, yes.
Rich girl.
Yes, who like they talk about her weight a lot, which is not okay, but she is voiced by Christina V, which is more than okay.
A dude who's into bondage.
Yeah, dude, super into bondage. We have a girl with 2 mechanical limbs,
mm-hmm.
and she's the youngest of everybody. Like they clearly say that she is a child. We have an office worker who seems very normal. We have a flower girl, not Aerith, but a girl who runs like a flower shop, I think. Is that everybody?
Did you talk about Haruto?
I said office worker.
Okay, yeah.
Normal.
Yeah. That is everyone.
Yes. He's not really an office worker, but he's essentially an office worker. He's a reporter type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we have this cast of characters and we have to figure out what the heck is happening.
That is basically the gist of this game.
Yes.
And then of course like I think if you've played Danganronpa games, like the story beats feel very similar.
Yes.
Like it is in that style of storytelling. So obviously like coming from members of that team, that makes a lot of sense. The gameplay is one of the things that I believe me and you have like had the most issues with. Not in terms of like it's like incredibly like difficult or anything. Well, I guess like it can be at times, but more in terms of like, is this gameplay necessary?
It did not need a battle system at all. It didn't need combat.
Which like the combat is basically, it's not good.
Yeah, it's not good.
You basically pick up just like random things, and some of them will be weapons and stuff, and then you can like find enemies in the field and run up to them and hit a button, and all 4 members in your party will hit it, and then there's a cooldown on being able to attack again, and then you can kind of like run around the enemy and get a better position on it and do the same thing over and over again. It's very, very simple. Very simple. We kind of talked about how like you mentioned, like the gameplay, the combat doesn't really seem necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But like the more I think about it, it seems like it's almost a double-edged sword where I don't feel like the combat is necessary in this game, like you said. But at the same time, if you don't have that combat, does the entire premise of the story kind of break?
Does it?
In terms of like being able to like constantly revive yourself and all that sort of stuff. Like, other than that, if you don't have it, basically you're just dying of old age over and over and over again. And a lot of this game is building up a lot of like different immunities and like just figuring out ways to die over and over again, which help you like, you know, improve your stats and everything, let you live longer. If you don't have that combat, a lot of that goes away. And it basically just becomes this puzzle game where it's like, you know, you're going through a bunch of different puzzles and you eventually just die of old age, which I don't think would have been really necessary.
That's how I played it.
Yeah, totally. It's the same way as I played it, but it felt like that part was only there just because, like, you know, it's with the story and everything, and the game is made in the idea of, like, you're going to be doing combat scenarios throughout this, and taking away the combat kind of is weird because, like, I feel like it played better. Like, I had a better enjoyment of the game not having combat, but at the same time, like,
we missed out on like items and things.
You missed out on a lot of stuff, and it just feels like a lot of the mechanics, like in terms of like how the story is shaped together, it just feels like it's just there for the sake of being there when you don't have the combat. So like it's weird, just double-edged sword. I think, where like I don't think the combat is necessary because I don't think it's good or anything. But at the same time, with the story they've developed, you kind of need that combat.
But then you're also having to like juggle the whole fact of like if you're not on the mode that I played in, then they will like need to pee and
Totally,
they
yeah.
to eat and they need to drink.
There's a lot of like survival mechanics in there.
Yeah. And so like if you're in the middle of a dungeon and your character has to pee and there's no bathroom, they're just gonna pee themselves and then they get upset and then they can't fight and it's like this is stressful. I don't want to do this. But then also like you have to imagine like you're in a party of 4 people and like one of your dudes just like himself. You're like, well, now you gotta walk around with pee pants over here.
It's like Trails of Cold Steel.
Who's
That's a joke only me and you are gonna get.
Yeah. Check your shadows, guys. Otherwise you're gonna look like your character's just peed himself in front of the class. But yeah, like imagine that you're like traversing through this dungeon and like some dude just peed himself next to you and he's very stressed out because he peed himself in front of you and then like you have to deal with this pee person. Like no thanks. For clarification, I played this on like the story mode basically where you didn't have to deal with any of the survival mechanics and you didn't have to really fight except for like bosses and like scripted fights. Because I have a low tolerance for now in my life.
You do.
And I sometimes just want to. I will also clarify the fact that this is one of the only games I've ever rage quit. I don't rage quit often, and you know that. I rage quit this game. I was livid.
There is in some of the dungeons there's like a weird thing where like sometimes there are things in blocking your path, and then if you come back to it later on, they will move to a different spot. And there's really no like reason for that. There's no like indication of when that'll happen. There's just
no way to like actually make it trigger.
True. Yeah. It's very bizarre, and like I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea.
No, it was bad.
And it was the thing you were just like you were very tired.
I was
just
very
done.
tired.
You were done.
I had been at work and I was trying to catch up and I got to this part and it just was not working and not working and not working, not working. I was trying at it for like an hour and eventually like I just gave up. I was like, no, I'm done. I'm going to bed. I have a headache. F this right now. That does not happen to me often. And so like this game can wear that hat. It gets the little crown of like Al rage quit me once. Yeah, that's I don't want to say it's a high honor because it's really not. It means that
it's an honor.
It's an honor of sorts.
Put that on the back of the box.
But yeah, I have like very little time to actually like play games now, and so and I don't have the whole, mindset of like an easy mode is a bad thing for a game. Because I'm not a terrible person.
Hey-o.
Hey! But I mean, like, I just sometimes want to play a game, get through the story, have fun, like, not struggle. And so that's how I was with this game. I was like, I have these options where I can actually, like, have to worry about whether my character has to pee on themselves or something. Or I could just enjoy the story. I was like, this is an easy choice. It's hard enough for me to decide, like, you know what, I really pee. I should travel across the apartment and go pee. Like, I don't want to have to worry about 8 other people having to pee.
Yeah. It's too many people having to pee.
So many people. And, like, I forget to feed myself. I'm not going to feed these characters. God. Theoretically, it's a good mechanic. But also, like, don't put this in games.
I think if you wanted to do that survival element of the game, like you could do it better.
You could.
I think that's kind of my like one of the problems I have with it is that it just seems half baked.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that for a lot of this game is that like it had some good ideas and they just weren't implemented very well.
True.
Yeah. So is that our spoiler-free review of this game? And we're gonna dive right into
let's talk about
mega
a
spoilers.
few things before we dive into spoilers. Let's talk about development history because we talked about this was
right.
This was from the minds of people within the Danganronpa team. So the concept of this game was first conceived by Takayuki Sugawara. It's a mouthful. He was a planner on Danganronpa and Danganronpa V3 and also a director on Danganronpa 2. And he came up with this after the release of the first game, Danganronpa, in 2010, where he had been a designer on the major in-game mechanics. Sugawara approached Spike Chunsoft producer and fellow Danganronpa developer Yoshinori Terasawa with the concept. Terasawa was very interested in producing the game, but the first Danganronpa game quickly turned into a franchise spanning several games and became the main focus of the development team, including both Sugawara and Terasawa, subsequently delaying the development of Zanki Zero for several years, and then it would eventually get announced 2 years ago on April 25th, 2017, and would be covered in the April 27th, 2017 edition of Famitsu, where they unveiled the first images and basically what the game would be. And they presented the game as like, this is different from the Danganronpa series, but kind of in the same vein, essentially.
Yeah.
One other notable thing to talk about is this game had some localization changes.
Oh, right. Yeah, we should talk about that.
We should talk about that.
For the better.
For the better. But people are still going to complain because they're dumb.
I mean, honestly, if you really, really need to see like an 8-year-old's panties, then you have real issues, my dudes. Just saying.
So some of this stuff came about because Sony implemented a new change in like their policies regarding the balance of freedom of expression and safety for children. So basically, they're reining in some of like adult themes on games, certain games specifically. This was one of the games affected by this. Amongst the localization, they implemented some of like quality of life changes, like we talked about, like the difficulty thing, which that came post release for the Japanese version. Other things they did was change Sachika a bit, who she can be interpreted as younger. She shows her underwear in certain scenes, and those have been cut out, which is for the better, I would say.
Yes.
There are bedtime scenes where the child versions of these characters are featured, and sometimes they're in their underwear in provocative positions. Those have also been cut.
Good.
And apparently there is an adjustment to a CG featuring child age Rinko where she covers her chest, which I think that's probably the first time she revives.
Oh, right, yeah.
Apparently also had to make a minor edit to the box art, increasing the coverage of Yuma's bathing suit to conform to public storefront display standards. Which I don't know like what the difference is. I guess
I was actually literally just looking that up.
I think it's just she shows, I don't know. I don't know the difference.
Her bathing suit in the Japanese one is more like a thong bathing suit.
Oh, yeah.
And the American version, it covers more.
I was anticipating it was going to be like they covered her side boob, but like that's just untouched.
Nope.
Don't show the butt, but you can show the boob.
Which is kind of weird that they have her in the bikini or in the bathing suit anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they did that, but yeah, like I am A-okay with them removing like sexualized underage people.
Definitely.
Imagine that. Wow. As a grown adult woman, I am not interested in seeing like 6-year-old. I think because most of them when they revive as children are 6. That's clarified. So I would say that Sachika is probably around that age. She's probably like 8 something. She's
I
she's
feel like she's like
younger.
young teen.
She might be young teen, like 12
Let me
maybe.
see if this Wikipedia has an age.
But the kids are kids.
Unknown.
They are 6. So like I don't need to see them in their undies at bedtime scenes. Like hard pass on that, my dudes.
Huh.
Huh?
Apparently in Danganronpa V3 there was references to both Sachika and Yuma's costumes in the game.
Really?
They appear on mannequins inside a certain character's research lab.
Huh.
So that's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
too bad V3 was terrible.
yeah. Before we get into spoilers, voice acting is good.
Voice acting is really good.
I kind of also I if there is one thing, I feel like there's not enough of it.
I agree because they usually do the like one word of the.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I do want to shout out that if you do play this game, and you play it in English the first time, go back and near the end, go back and rewatch like the ending parts of this game in Japanese and listen to Aina Suzuki's version of Sachika in that game because holy she kills it.
Aina kills it.
Which we are obviously fans of hers because of her involvement in Love Live Sunshine, but like holy she does a fantastic job in those end scenes. Like honestly, I would say like those performances like blow what she does in Love Live Sunshine out of the water. Like it's
1,000%.
phenomenal.
She does such a good job. It's insane how good of a job she does there. Like I was near tears just listening to her. But she just is amazing. Also, she's adorable, so everybody should love her anyway. But yeah, Aina just. I mean, I guess, as you said, killed it. She just destroyed that scene and destroyed my heart.
Which was a funny thing when like I was looking through it and I was like, wait, Aina? She's in this game? And like I texted you and you were like, what? What?
All caps. What? No capitalization or no punctuation. Me excited about Aina being in a game.
No surprise there.
No surprise. I have the biggest crush on that girl. She's like insanely talented, like disgustingly talented.
She can act, she can sing, she can dance.
And she can be freaking cute.
That too.
God, she's cute. Anyway, now that we've talked about my want to make Aina my adorable same height girlfriend, then let's continue.
There's 2 things trivia I want to talk about before we get into spoilers as well. In various parts of the island, the player sees distinctive signs featuring a cutout of a boy who is running. These signs are based on a real-world safety sign used all over Japan for many decades called Tobi Dashiboya, literally dashing out boy, designed to warn drivers of the dangers of children running into the road. And then Haruto's second strategy video found in Mashiro Garden Tower features the silhouette of a plush rabbit with bow on its right ear, likely to be Monami from the Danganronpa series.
Which there are posters throughout the dungeons that reference, or they're like straight up Danganronpa advertisements.
True, like you have one for like all the games.
All the games.
Supposedly as well, you will find Monokuma enemies.
Really?
In the game you can fight, yeah. I think they're like rare. They're rare enemies, but like they are in the game to fight.
Weird.
So let's get into some spoilers.
All right, cool. Let's do the thing.
So if you're listening and you don't want to be spoiled on this very recent released game, this is the time to bow out, and we will see you next week. But if you were like, I don't care, whatever, I'll watch some spoilers, listen to some spoilers. Here you go. We're gonna dive into some spoilers. So we haven't really talked about what we've thought about the story of this game.
We have not.
I am very curious to hear what you think about it.
It was better than I expected it to be. I will say that.
Okay.
it didn't blow me out of the water in terms of like I was very impressed with like Danganronpa. I can't even say it right now. I'm so freaking tired. Dang old grandpa 1 and 2. And so like immediately giving me that comparison is probably not a good idea on their part.
I feel like that kind of in a way hinders it because like I mentioned earlier in the show, like the way the story progresses and the story beats are very reminiscent of Danganronpa, where like you have a late game reveal of like who the mastermind is, but it's just kidding, it's not the real mastermind, and that felt very Danganronpa-esque.
Oh, it really did.
So I was like, oh, okay. There's like fake out deaths and everything. Like it's very much like if you've played a Danganronpa game, you have seen these plot points before, and they are just being implemented in a different way. Which, like you said, like it kind of, if you've gone through and played those games before, like this isn't anything new. This isn't gonna blow you away.
I did think that despite the fact that you can have them revive into kid forms, like for the most part, you're dealing with a mostly adult cast, which was kind of cool. They're all like around 25, except for 2 exceptions. So that was neat to me. I'm like, okay, cool. We're playing as adults. I like this. And then they turn to 6 years old. I'm like, well, never mind. You're not an adult anymore. But they have a brain of an adult.
They go from kid to adult to middle aged to old.
Senior. So like that was an interesting mechanic. I don't know that it was like great, but it was an interesting mechanic. And like the story itself, like it was it had the spokes of like hey, we're gonna learn what each character is going through. We're gonna figure out why they got here. Some of them were way weaker than others.
Some of them are just super over the top.
Yeah, some of them are really over the top. Some of them are really, really lame. Like the police girls one, I was like, okay, like what was the point of that?
Yeah, that's fair.
There was another one that was like that too. What was it? Crap, now I don't remember. But then, some of them you have like a monkey as your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird, like multiple instances of incest in this game.
Multiple. Yes. You have very uncomfortable moments of like sexual assault, which like, hey, maybe a trigger warning would be helpful on this.
I think there is at the beginning of the game.
All right, I seem to have missed that.
I think it's like when you're loading up the game, there's like a notice. It's like, hey, there's going to be stuff in here that might be uncomfortable to some players.
Okay. Because that comes up a lot. There's a lot of abuse. Some murder. Some uncomfortable situations in terms of like, is this incest or is this not incest? Because there's also lots of incest. Pedophilia.
Yep.
Like this game kind of like runs the gauntlet of people.
And like each person is supposed to be like based around one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yes.
Like with the exception of one person. So like that's kind of like what each individual's scenario or past event that they go through is supposed to be kind of like based around. But yeah, like a lot of them just kind of go completely off the rails.
Yeah, like I said, one of them has a monkey for a dad.
Legit. Like what?
I mean, that's a thing. A monkey for a dad.
One of the characters just turns into her mom and bones her dad.
Yeah, that.
Like what the f?
And like the worst part about that is that like when you have like how it works is that they have like TV that tells you like they have like tapes where they show you the events that are going on, but they're like silhouetted and they have like features that you see that you recognize as the character. And like you have the whole thing of like her mom dying and then her deciding she's going to like take the place of her mom. Then like the next video is like her dad saying, "Oh, you look just like your mom from behind," and I'm just like, gross,
Big gross.
gross. That's not okay. But also, she like specifically gains weight in order to like make him happy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very weird. But yeah, sometimes I guess you gotta become your mom and bone
Further
your
proof
dad.
we should eat the rich.
Yes, I agree. Yes. Um, which I guess we should at least talk about that framing device of the extend TV.
It's weird.
It is weird. You have a young boy and
A sheep.
his sheep
Yeah.
companion Mirai.
They're mascot characters.
They're mascot characters. Show is a very pervy young guy. And he tries to make like everything into a sex joke, which gets old after a while. Like every once in a while, you're like, oh, okay, that was funny. But then, like, for the most part, you're like, okay, I get it. Like, he's a pervy young kid. Like, all right, rad, keep going. Um, but that's the whole framing device is that like they're driven by this extend TV and like there are tapes that are like throwing their past out there for everybody to see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like also there's like each chapter goes through the character's point of view.
Yes.
So like you don't have one single protagonist of the game.
Which I thought was really interesting because like
I wasn't expecting it.
you kind of like obviously you start the game as Haruto and you're like, okay, well this is gonna be the dude. This is your protagonist, and then like you get to the next chapter and you are a completely different character, and it's like, oh, that's interesting.
But also like going from like Haruto's story to Police Lady's story, like
We go to, I think you go to Zen's first.
oh yeah, you do go to Zen's. Okay, so going from Haruto to Zen to the Police Lady, then you're like, well, those two are fantastic and crazy, and then you get hers, and it's like,
But
okay.
I think the good thing about that though is like you get into each character's headspace of like what they're thinking when they're going through this and reliving all these events, and I think that
Yes.
that's a good benefit to have because if you were just looking at it through like the point of view of one character, seeing what each character was going through, like you wouldn't have that same level of impact that you do.
Right, you wouldn't know what's going on in their head and how they're reacting to these videos. So it's nice and like it's one of the things that the game does really right. But I mean, Haruto's was a good place to start. That was a pretty tragic backstory. But also like you're playing in his dungeon and then you just die.
Rip.
Yep. You just get stabbed through the gut with a weird tentacle thingy. And then you get revived as a 6-year-old boy.
And then I think that's kind of like where you learn that like you're all clones.
Yep.
And then there's a whole thing about cloning in this game.
Yep.
There's a little like plot point about it, obviously, and then there's like if you read like the notes, there's like an entire subplot that revolves around the cloning thing, and it's super wild.
Like how this one country, it's against their religion to clone, so they've sent spies into the like cloning region to try and like disrupt the process and like the notes all tell you like what's going on with that. It is crazy. It's like a little mini novel that you go through.
I think they actually like they call it in the credits like it's like a light novel. Like they call it that, and like they credit like a different author for it specifically. So I thought was interesting. But yeah, like it's this whole thing that like you could completely miss, but like they do reference it later in like the story. So like if you've read it, you're in the know. But yeah, it's real interesting. Like it goes into some just wild things. But yeah, clones. You're all clones, and then the world's Dunskies. No more world.
No more world.
Except for the floating ruins that just keep floating to your island.
Convenient.
Very convenient.
I was gonna say something now. I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Well, that's convenient.
Yeah.
So like you go through those first couple of stories and everything is just like, for the most part, it's just finding out some person's trauma in their past, and confronting a boss version of that trauma and defeating it. And
Correct.
that's kind of how it goes for the first three. Early on, Zen starts getting this idea that there's a traitor amongst you, because of course, once again, Danganronpa parallels.
He thinks that it is the rich lady.
He thinks it is Yuma, and then you eventually get to her story, and she's all talking about how she wants to get rid of everything, enact this plan to kill everyone and get rid of all the clones, get rid of the extend machines and everything. And then obviously you go through all her stuff, and then like at the end of, I think it's her story, you learn a little bit about kind of like the waste, I think, of the clones and everything like that, and also that people in this group are connected to each other.
Yes.
Because I think some of them are starting to get their memories back, because they've had their memories tampered with, so they don't remember things from like their younger days.
Convenient.
Very convenient. So they remember like hanging out as kids, and they in the garage they're in, and it's the same one.
They were garage kids.
They were the garage kids, and I think around the same time is when they remember that Sachika gets murdered.
Yes.
And the person that you look at, or the game designs the character around, makes it so it seems like it's Haruto, and all the characters that remember this are like, oh, this is real bad. He probably murdered her. We should stay away from him.
I think that's after Rope Boy's story, isn't it?
It might be, but it's like
anyway,
basically in that same area.
Because you have to address that a lot in
Rinko's, yeah.
I keep wanting to call her Rico.
I know.
That is not her name.
I mean, red hair, similar name.
Yeah.
Totally plausible. But yeah, like the game basically is like throwing it out. You're like, oh yeah, it's totally Haruto. Look at him. It's totally him. And
it's him.
We were basically texting back and forth like, it can't be him. There's no way it's him. It is way too on the nose for it to be him.
Yeah, we're like that. If it's him, then that's super lame,
Yeah.
and they're terrible at telling stories.
And they had been like, there had been different backstory, like flashbacks that they had been showing, and a lot of them had shown all of the characters except for Haruto. So he had been conveniently left out of these flashbacks. So it kind of starts building this case of like, okay, if it looks like him, sure, maybe that's a check mark. He is being left out of all these flashbacks, so like we know it's not any of the other characters clearly, because they've been shown. So that's another check mark towards him. And then like once they go into Rinko's dungeon, they find this book that's like, here's this mass serial murderer, and he has this different name than Haruto, but look, he looks just like him. So you got another check mark next to him. And that basically leads this whole thing of like, there's this disarray in the group. They all don't trust him. And he's just like, what are you guys talking about? I didn't do anything like this. All the while, there's also been one of the creatures that they've found, which are kind of like these like weird mishmash of like clones and just like weird creatures that they find, like kind of similar to the boss characters they find. One of them they find is intelligent.
Yes.
And
he sings London Bridge a lot.
He sings London Bridge, and then he finds Sachika and kills her.
Yep.
And they're like, dude, what the f***?
I think his name's like Kasuke or something. Kasuke.
Something like that. Kuranosuke.
And I know it's got the ske at the end. Yeah,
it's a K name with a ske at the end.
Yeah, K-ske.
But yeah, they run into him a lot, and then at the end of this dungeon, they run into him again. And they basically are thinking that like, oh, it's Haruto trying to get everyone murdered and everything, working together with this dude. Beefy
tries to gut the cop, not the cop.
Beefy
the
Doc gets messed up. And basically you have to go and like fight some stuff, and then he shows back up again, and Haruto basically is like, hey, leave this to me. I will sacrifice myself so everyone gets out of here.
Well, he says that like he'll get through it. He'll come back to him. Like, it'll be okay. Just take the X keys, get out, because everybody's got to survive.
Because everyone else got f***ed up.
So he tells Rinko, like, you go, I'll meet you later. And she's like, he knew he wasn't gonna come back from that,
Mm-hmm.
but
He
like,
still did it anyways.
yep.
And that kind of like wins her trust of him back. And then like after that, she remembers a thing that happened in the past, and it changes the face of the doctor to Haruto.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, he was there.
Yep.
He was there the entire time. It wasn't him.
He was trying to impress her when he was a kiddo,
Mm-hmm.
and he was being made fun of for flirting with her.
So they come to realize that, and then
Like, doctor, what do you have to say about
mm-hmm.
this?
Which I think is the case is that she revives everyone but the doctor because she
But the
realizes
doctor.
he's changed in that flashback. So like that's very suspect. And then she informs everyone else, and then they revive him. They're like, "Yo, buddy, you got some explaining to do."
Yeah, she said that she was afraid to revive him first because she knew that he was like good at talking his way out of things
Mm-hmm.
since he had been lying to them for so long. And so she wanted backup with everybody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, they revive him and he's like a kiddo, like, hey guys, what's up? And they're like, you got some explaining to do. And he's like, oh.
Which he doesn't really fight it. He's pretty much like, as soon as he gets confronted with, like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's me. I'm the mastermind.
I'm the mastermind.
Which kind of almost throws it into a loop as well. Like he's kind of confirming this way too quickly.
Yeah.
Like, is this really the case? But
we find out that he is not the same age as them. He was their school doctor type thing, but also a teacher at their school.
And the other reveal is that he and Sachika are related.
Yes.
They're like, I guess it would be half siblings.
Half siblings.
Yeah.
They have the same dad.
They have the same dad. So that's also a thing. And they're like, duh, what? Also, Haruto is dead.
He's dead. Yeah, his X key got busted. They go back to the school to check and see if he they can just get the X key and extend him.
And it's busted.
Is busted. They're like, oh no, he's dead. And doctor's like, but is he dead?
Doctor lures them into the next dungeon, which is the hospital, and he's like, so I can bring him back. There's a spare X key here. I just have to get that X key, and then we can bring him back. And along the way, the entire time, he's just like, yeah, I'm saying that, but I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like, come on. And essentially, you learn kind of like the backstory of him and Sachika, where she eventually she confronted him first, and then they learned about that. He invites her to live with him because like their parents are both just real bad at things.
Yeah. So basically, like his parents got together and had a kid because they're like, oh, we're both smart. Let's have a smart kid. And then like he was smart, but he wasn't as smart as they wanted. So like, all right, this sucks. And so dad left mom and Dr. Kid and went and found him a new lady and had another kid in attempt to try and get a genius and succeeded this time. And that is Sachika.
Yes. And he's also kind of thrown her away as well, the dad.
Yes. And so she's like, I don't like that I am like my parents don't care about me. And he's like, well, I will care about you.
I know how you feel.
Yep.
So that all happens, and then eventually she gets murdered because the garage kids are basically forced to make an ultimatum where the serial killer comes into the garage and has her at like knife point and is like, point to someone you want to see die. And they all point to Sachika because they're like, oh, no one's going to point to her. We all like her. She's the coolest here.
Except for Sachika points at his name is Yosuke.
Yeah.
But she points at him, which is actually very smart.
Yeah.
That she's like, you know what? I'm just going to point at this guy because he sucks. But yeah, once they all pointed at her, it's like, no. And he murders her and like cuts off her arm and her leg. Which explains why she has metallic and prosthetics.
The doc is like, he is super distraught about this. He steals her body. Because
at the funeral.
At the funeral, because he knows, I think he's going to figure out some way to bring her back, and then his dad brings him into the fold in terms of like the cloning business and all that sort of stuff. And then he basically starts coming up with this plan to enact revenge against the garage kids as well. Along the way, dad cloned Sachika from like cells he had acquired from her, not the body. but he gets the body in exchange for the dog coming in to work with him. And then he takes care of the clone Sachika, which the dad's just like, I don't. She's worthless. She is not Sachika. She is nothing. She doesn't have the same personality or anything. It's not the same person.
He was just gonna kill her.
Yeah.
Which also, it should be mentioned that like their dad is insane.
Legit.
Like, he kind of like comes across at first as like, oh, I'm a quirky individual, but like he's nuts. Hey, are you nuts? Oh, headbutt.
And you see him at one point as well in like the Yuma's backstory where it goes about her dad and he's working with her dad in terms of the cloning, and the dad's like, I'm shutting all this cloning stuff down, and the doctor's like, no, or the dad's like, no, we're not doing that. That's kind of like the first indication of like, oh, this dude's off his rocker.
And like is enjoying the fact that Yuma's dad gets like assaulted by a failed clone of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I think she like puts a tentacle down his throat or something.
Something like that.
I mean, it's very brutal from what I understand, and also what the doctor explains is that it's like a very, very brutal attack, but he like let it happen because he wanted basically to punish him for even saying he would shut it down.
Yeah.
It's wild. But this dude's psycho.
He wears a shirt of a game that's in the extend machine, so clearly what this game is saying that is that capital G gamers are bad and should not be trusted.
I mean, accurate.
That's the one thing you should take away from this game.
Which it is explained that like the garage kids played that game a lot in the garage. Because like Rope Boy was a big fan of it.
But also bad at it.
Because that
game's hard.
He tried. It is hard.
But I think that's the point.
Yes. So Doctor is like, okay, this is my backstory. I used to be very string beanie, and then I decided I was gonna get beefy. Which it's funny that he's like, I had to like tweak the machine a bit so that I wouldn't show back up as my like string beanie self, and I would show up as the beefy guy. And I'm like, all right.
And also he's been planning this for years. Like,
he's been setting up all the videos.
He wrote all the videos, like the Extend TV stuff, and gathered all that stuff, gathered everyone to the island.
He's the one who kidnapped them in the first place. Like, he's been planning this for years.
All to enact his plan for revenge.
Yes, because they killed his beloved sister. I mean, they didn't, but he feels like they did.
So they get to like the boss area of this place, and
Keisuke.
Yeah, that dude's there.
What? I didn't say Siri.
One thing that is noticeable about this, or should be mentioned, is that like the doctor keeps mentioning that like that dude betrayed me. Like, he is not a part of my plan. I am not bringing him into this. Like, when he stabbed me, that was done. So like, he's not part of the plan anymore. I'm gonna mess him up.
Yeah, because originally he was part of the plan, and then he's like, nope, he ripped my belly button out. No, thank you.
He also the serial killer dude also has the X key that they need.
Yes.
He chomps it, and they're like, well, we gotta fight him. So you gotta fight him and all that. You defeat him, do all that stuff. Shut down like the regenerating machine that has him keep regenerating. And then basically Doc's like, yeah, I'm not giving you this. This XC's mine. I'm not letting you guys revive Haruto. They're like, oh, excuse me.
I'm going to break it. He says that he essentially wants them to feel the loss of like losing somebody forever that you care about. And they're like, how about no?
And then Sachika like starts turning into like her old self, or what the Doc thinks was her old self, and like convinces him to help them. Which I was like very sketched out by this. I was like, this is not.
Yeah.
I was like, she's gonna be the true villain.
Because there's no indication that like she should be able to recover their memories. Like, maybe there's two Sachikas. There's one that's like old Sachika and one that is like traumatized innocent Sachika.
Science. Maybe we just haven't learned this in science yet.
And she even says, like, there's no scientific reason for this to make sense,
Mm-hmm.
but it's happening anyway, so deal with it.
So I when that happened, I was like, is she gonna be the true the true mastermind of all this, like the true
And I
villain
mean,
behind
you
it?
weren't really wrong.
Technically, I'm kind of correct. Technically.
Parts of her were the real
Yep.
mastermind.
So yeah, they go back to the garage and everything's kind of just like hunky dory, and they're just like, well, I guess we're just gonna figure this out and
Just
survive.
survive.
And then eventually they realize like,
Oh, also, we forgot to mention that, like, Doctor watched the end of the world.
oh yeah, he watched all that stuff happen. He watched all that go
Like
down.
the little like nano machine things from the
Oh
cloning device
god,
like took over the world.
When they started getting into nano machines, I was like, oh come on.
Yeah,
I've played
it
enough
was-
Metal Gear to hear enough about nano machines to last a lifetime.
So the nano machines cause the apocalypse.
Nano machine, son.
He's like, yeah, I connected all the extend machines. That was smart, right? Oh wait, no, it wasn't smart. Also, these like anti-cloning terrorists did some things. Yay!
So a bunch of stuff happens.
The world ends.
The world ends. So yeah, like they all go back to the island. They're all thinking like everything's gonna be fine. And then eventually
They can't make babies.
They can't make babies unless they use Sachika.
Well, and again, she's a kid.
And the dog's like, no.
I mean, but also like they can't actually use Sachika because he said that like before, like even if they were to ejaculate, like the nano machines would destroy any sperm or egg.
Mm-hmm.
So there are no babies.
So
I can't believe I just talked about sperm and eggs on this podcast.
that's what our podcast is.
Oh my god.
So everything seems fine, and then eventually another thing shows up, and they're all like looking at the dog like, "Hey, did you do this?" Because like he shows them eventually before they go to the hospital, like, "Hey, there's like a submarine under this island that I can maneuver things to."
I've been moving the ruins, and they're like, "Hey, why did you do this?" He's like,
I did not do. I've been looking for that, which is like the Mani headquarters. It's like the research where all the cloning stuff was happening. He's like, I've been looking for that this entire time, and I just assumed it had submerged under the sea or under the ocean, like it was gone for good. I don't know why that's there. And
they're like, "Yeah, sure, likely story."
they're like, all right, we're gonna go there. So this is a very winding and confusing dungeon that you got to go through because there's just like it's a bunch of stuff you got to kind of keep going through, and it's like looping back around a lot and all sorts of stuff. At one point, eventually, you're about to go into like the main facility, and then Sachika starts acting real weird.
Yep.
And then her arm just flies off, and she's like, "Wah!"
And they're like, we don't know if it's oil or if it's blood, but there's a lot of it leaking from her. And then like
The arm starts talking.
The arm starts talking, and it turns out that like this is the dad. He's an X key in her arm.
He is an AI.
He is an AI.
And he's hid himself in her arm because they keep mentioning like, you know, if the doctor's plan was to get revenge on everyone, why did Sachiko wake up first before him?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, now we realize the doctor, or the dad doctor, was hiding in her arm, waiting for his moment to exact his own revenge and basically create or become a god of the new world. Create new humans that were perfect and not full of flaws.
As you do. So that explains why Sachika had a different personality. He's like, oh, hey, did you like my impersonation of her? Nah. Doctor's like, you son of a
So yeah, all that happens. They take her back and get her a new arm, and she's like, I'm good. And then they go back.
She's back to like perky, happy version of Sachika.
They gotta go back and figure out the rest of the dungeons. Once they go inside the actual facility, they are greeted with a new TV show, Shin Extend TV, which is in color this time.
It's in color.
And
they're like,
dad
this
doc's
is
in the
original
background.
version.
And he keeps on saying like, hey, don't follow me. This is real dangerous. So, of course, you're going to keep following him through this long, winding facility.
Very long, very winding.
And eventually you will get to the original extend machine.
Yes.
which does not look like anything of the others. Because the other ones look
It
like
is
arcade
not
machines.
not an
Yeah.
arcade machine.
This just looks like a weird thing of tubes and stuff.
And apparently we learned that like Sachika's mom has sacrificed herself and like her uterus survives in like the original machine. You're like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's
okay.
the thing.
That's a thing.
So yeah, you gotta fight Dad Doc. Oh, you gotta fight the
Yeah,
mascots of Extend TV first.
you do. And it's kind of cute in a weird way because like they're annoying, but then like during this fight, like after you beat them, they're like, you missed on purpose, didn't you? And like, I care about these people now. So they care about you, but yeah, they go kaput.
And then you gotta fight Dad Doc, who just goes into the machine and becomes the machine. Because that's a thing.
And he becomes like partially naked.
When you go into the machine, you gotta get nude.
Dong out.
Dong out.
I mean, he put
Dong
the
out
X key.
Rampa.
Oh my God. He put the X key into the machine. And by X key, I mean the mechanical arm,
Mm-hmm.
and then like came out as an extended version of himself, but like naked, but with wires. It was very odd. But then like you murder him.
You murder him, you think everything's good. And he's like, come here, Sachika. I want to hold your hand once before I die. And they shoink.
He murders
Shanks her in the
her.
stomach and destroys her X key.
Yep. Because originally they were like, "Oh, it's okay, Sachika. It just die. It's okay. We'll revive
Like
you."
Zen's really like, I'm gonna cut your throat. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's like it's better than you suffering. And then like doctor was like, "No, no, 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 that's not okay." Well, originally he was saying like, "Oh, well, we'll use the X key and
Mm-hmm.
we'll do that." Not gonna work. But then the X key, they're like, "Oh, it's destroyed." Well, there's got to be another one. We'll just do what we did
With Haruto.
last time. And then like, oh, but wait, when we were reviving Haruto, we realized that she didn't have any data
Mm-hmm.
saved. So there is actually no way to do that. And so everybody's like, oh God, it's
Because
over.
her X key is a different model than theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she's done so.
She's done so. Which this is the part where we're saying that Aina just like destroys
Nails
everything in
it.
terms of voice acting. Like she
God.
is phenomenal here.
It is amazing.
Because Sachika has like a monologue here where she's dying and she's like talking to people, but like Aina nails it.
Because like you can hear her just like sobbing and her acting and just like really emphasizing, just like you can really feel the emphasization
Mm-hmm.
on like her putting out that Sachika is very emotional at the moment, also struggling with a lot of pain and dying.
Yeah, like one of the things that is really impressive and also very hard to do is that like she makes her coughs sound really brutal.
That was the weird thing about that was like that was the point. I was like, oh, that's just Aina.
Yeah.
Which is the weirdest thing to pick up on. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's Aina. Just
Yep.
regular old cough.
Um, but it's really really hard to actually do a cough and like unprompted and make it
Totally.
sound normal.
Totally.
Like when you have that big of a wound and you're like bleeding out, then like yeah, it's gonna happen and you're gonna make a lot of really terrible sounds. And she pulls it off, but like also like you said, she's like sobbing in the middle of it, and you're like, oof, it
Mm-hmm.
hurts. It hurts.
But she does a
Goddamn,
great job.
she does such a good job.
Like holy
She does not say shiny.
she does not say shiny or it's joke.
It's joke.
But like I
It hurts.
would put that up there with one of the best voice performances I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, same.
Like
Hard same.
God, it's so good.
It's super good.
But yeah, Sachika dies, and they decide to put the remains of her X key in the first extended machine.
They're like, well, she may as well be with her mom.
And they're about to like leave because they said the door's open because they.
Which I'm gonna say real quick, it's weird that like she may as well be with her mom because her mom didn't want her.
No, and also she's a clone, so it wouldn't have been her actual mom.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, they're like, well, I'll leave
It's a
you with your
nice
mom. And then
gesture, I guess.
it is, but then the door opens and like, oh, I guess we're gonna go back to the island and deal with this
And then a
then.
bunch of weird, like, lights start going off, and they're like, "Oh, we're about to die again.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh God, he revived. What? Why are you back?
We're gonna fight him again."
We're gonna fight Dad until he keeps dying.
But that is not the case.
That's not the case.
They,
Instead,
yeah, all the lights happen, and they're like, "Are we okay? Everyone good? Everyone good?" And they start to hear like a baby crying.
there's a baby.
A baby.
A
And
baby.
they're like, "What? Why is there crying?" And they go to investigate.
Who is this baby?
There's a baby, and it looks a lot like Sachiko.
Looks a lot like Sachiko.
Oh.
Oh.
So they take the baby and go back to the garage island and take care of it.
I keep wanting to call it Garbage Island.
There's a lot of garbage there.
There is a lot of garbage. But I always want to call it Garbage Island instead of Garage. But yeah, sometimes a family is like a ton of dads and a ton of moms all raising a baby. And being cloned a lot.
There you go.
Yep.
So that leads you into the kind of post-credit
Epilogue?
stuff, the epilogue, where we see it kind of like 5 years later, and baby Sachika has kind of grown up a bit.
Yep.
We learn that like they've kind of taken her around, taught her how to survive in this environment and everything, but also that their X keys have failed.
The extend machine is dead. Yeah.
Yeah, the extend machine has run out. They are now, all of them are just X keys now, and you get like this moment of like their last moments together with Sachika before they turn and everything. So it goes through everyone. They leave. Haruto is the last one, and he gives like he's like talking to her. She's very emotional. But he remembers the game. And this moment with Ryo and Sachika, and he's like, "Why am I remembering this now?" And he's like, "Oh," and then he says something to her, but the game doesn't tell you right away.
He basically says like, my life feels kind of like a video game right now, and then he's like, wait a minute,
Video games? What are those?
I'm in a video game right now. But yeah, he whispers some things, and you don't know what it is.
And then basically she carries all the X keys around like in a necklace, and is like, "Well,
it's so cute.
I've got to go out into this world and try and find the last another person, to try and survive." And then credits roll, and you get kind of like these pictures that show like her adventures and everything, going out to all these different environments, trying to find stuff, find ways to survive, and all this.
Find that person.
The pictures kind of end where like she gets flown off a cliff.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, this is bad.
She gets like charged by a boar and falls off a cliff. And she's bloody.
And then the post-credit scene happens, and she's like waking up, and there's a person there.
Conveniently, a guy.
Very convenient.
And he's like, "Will you tell me your name?" She's like, "Yes, I'm Sachika."
And then like, I think around this time you learned that like what Haruto tells her is that like, just like a video game, life doesn't end when you have 0 lives. There's always another one.
Yeah.
Like that's not you don't have 0 lives. You still have a life. And then the game kind of ends with like the Zanki meter filling up with lives again.
Yeah. Which the whole thing is that like every once in a while throughout the game, they're like, oh, there's no way this meter's wrong. There's only this many people alive.
Yes.
Like there's nobody else out there.
When the number is so low, it has to be that accurate.
Yeah. And
but here's just some random dude in a shack.
Yep, he realizes like, yeah, 0 is actually a thing. And so yeah, I don't know how this guy survived and why he's like a relatively young dude, but like, cool. I think we get to 3 lives on the thing.
Like 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
It might be 4. I think we get 2 extra. But so anyway,
that's how you end
we're gonna have an Adam and Eve situation, which is fitting since we had the like.
Considering they literally call her the like
sins.
They have the 7 deadly sins, and she is called the original sin.
Yeah, the original sin. So there's gonna be some more incest.
I
Yay!
found it interesting when I was watching the Japanese version of that final scene where they have that dude speaking English.
Oh, they have him speak English?
In the Japanese version, yeah.
Really?
Which is interesting because she responds in Japanese.
Oh, I didn't see that part. I'll have
Yeah,
to watch it. How's it sound?
it sounds like a Japanese person speaking English.
Okay.
So, what you would
I didn't
expect.
know if they just I didn't know if they like put the English voice actor in there or
No,
something.
I would doubt that they would have that. They would have had that in time for the Japanese release.
That's true.
So,
But yeah, that's interesting that they have him speak English.
yeah, I thought it was like a neat little twist, which you don't really get in the English dub. But yeah, that is it.
Yeah.
That's also the game.
So yeah, I mean, it has some super flaws, and like I said, it's one of the few games I've ever rage quit. I did go back to it though. I did finish it, so there is that.
I
But
think the story's all right.
it's all right.
I'm not gonna say it's like great or anything, but like it's not bad.
Mm,
I think like we talked about, like if you've played Danganronpa games, like it that kind of hurts it a bit because you kind of see some of the beats coming from a little mile away, but as well, like I enjoyed like the way it all wrapped up and everything, and all of that. Like it was that last like 15 to 30 minutes was pretty gosh darn emotional.
yep.
But I think as well, like there is flaws with it. Like I don't think the combat's good or anything, and like there's the issue of like, does it really need any of that combat? Does it need
Yeah.
any of that in terms of gameplay? Which I think are valid concerns about it.
Hmm.
So yeah, like I think it's something that like, if you're into this style of game, if you've played the Danganronpa games and you like that style, like you should check this out. I wouldn't say buy it at full price. Maybe wait till it's on sale
Yeah, I would agree
and
with that.
get it then. But like if you like those sort of games, like sure, why not check this out? And
I could agree with that.
if you don't like the combat, just turn the difficulty all the way down and just eliminate that process.
Which apparently there are like bonding events that neither of us got.
Yeah, like you can place people together if you make beds, which I didn't do till like halfway
Yeah.
through the game, and then just didn't really do anything with because I don't really
I,
need
I
to.
made bedrooms, but I don't think I made
Oh yeah,
beds.
bedrooms. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, those were a thing. But I don't. I saw a lot of people in the comments of the video I watched of the end parts in Japanese were like, "Oh, I hope they make a sequel or something else in this." I'm like, eh.
No.
I honestly thought like I would have thought it would have been funny if the twist at the end was Sachiko finds herself in the Danganronpa universe.
Oh, that would have been
Like
funny.
it's like Makoto finding her.
That would have been funny.
I thought like it would have made a lot of sense, honestly. Like you could look at the Danganronpa world as a post-apocalyptic world.
It
It
is.
could make sense that like this kind of thing would happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly thought that was going to be the post-credits teaser of like she's going to find one of the Danganronpa characters and that's going to be the person she finds. But it wasn't, but like, it's fine. But I don't know if we really need more of this. Like if they did come out with more of this and like maybe refined on the gameplay and stuff and all that, like sure, why not? Maybe I'd check that out, but as it stands right now, like I'm kind of okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um this game apparently did review really high in Japan though, which is kind of surprising.
Really?
It got a 9988 from Famitsu for 34 of 40. And then Dengeki PlayStation gave it a 95, 90, 80, and 95 from 4 different reviewers.
Wow.
So that's surprising. But yeah, that is Zanki Zero. It is a video game.
It is a video game. We did it. We got through this.
We did do it.
I didn't fall asleep.
I'm glad. You get to go to sleep after this.
Oh, thank God.
So that's gonna wrap this episode up. So Al can hit the hay and go to sleep and hopefully get some gosh darn rest.
And hopefully have a better day
And hopefully
tomorrow.
have a gosh darn better day. Or I'll fight days.
Fight the days.
Fight the days of our lives.
Oh my God.
So if you'd like more from us, go to seasonlanguagecheckup.com or sac.cool. It's where you can find past episodes of this podcast and other podcasts like Season Language Checkup and Jared and Al Watch. You can also find columns and reviews on the site as well. If you'd like more from AnnLadium, go to AnnLadium.com. She's got good columns and reviews there. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/animecheckup. It's where we do Twitter. And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/SACOVA. Next week, we will do something, I don't know. That's next week. That's way too far in the future.
We'll figure it out.
We always do.
Mm-hmm.